Hi, I'm Shalini Bharadwaj. You all are watching ITV Network's Medically Speaking. So before starting my show, I would like to give an important message to everyone that be aware, but do not panic. This is very important. And today we will be going to discuss about the judicial use of testing, drugs, and oxygen to treat COVID-19 patients. We have with us on our panel Dr. K.K. Agarwal, who is a former president of Indian Medical Association. We have with us Dr. Kaushal Verma, who is a professor of dermatology at AIIMS, and Dr. Atul Mathur, who is the Executive Director, Interventional Cardiology and Chief of Cath Labs at Fortis Escorts. Welcome to Medically Speaking, sir.
Namaskar.
My first question goes to Dr. K.K. Agarwal. Sir, what should be the common prescription which should be given to COVID-19 patients?
So first of all, let us understand that the virus has changed. We now have a UK virus, original wild virus. We had B1.1, 617 double mutation virus, and now we also have 618 virus in West Bengal. So there are multiple viruses. They are behaving differently. One thing is common in all of them, and that is the body reacts to them with inflammation and thrombosis. Day 1 is gamma interferon response. Day 3 is Th1 inflammation, and day 5 is Th17 inflammation. So what happens is by day 5, if you don't treat, they develop microthrombi. So the fundamental principle of COVID-19 is A, to prevent inflammation. So therefore, we make sure that our metabolic syndrome, diabetes, blood pressure is under control. Number 2, once we develop the virus, and if there is a high viremia, we prevent thromboinflammation by giving anti-inflammatory steroids and anticoagulant. Today, we are talking about non-heparin oral anticoagulant as early as possible. If we get by day 3 any signs of thromboinflammation, which is CRP more than 10, fever more than 101, and by day 5, if we find high D dimer or fall in platelets by day 3, we must make sure that our thromboinflammation is under control. Our point is keep your CRP less than 5 by day 5, and in any case less than 10 by day 10. If you do not treat thromboinflammation in time, these are the people who end up onto oxygen dependent, high flow oxygen dependent, or ventilator dependent, and some of them will end up in taking a new birth.
Dr. Atul, sir, what are those symptoms when RT-PCR is required?
See, RT-PCR is a test to detect the virus particles present in your nasal and the oral passages. And that is where the COVID virus inhabits. So RT-PCR can be offered in asymptomatic patients also if they have been close contacts of a COVID infected person, or let's say a healthcare worker who has been exposed to COVID aerosols of an infected patient. So symptoms are not necessary. We can screen them because once they get infected, they could be infective to other people. Second, we look for people who have symptoms suggestive of COVID, and symptoms can be mild, they can be moderate, or they could be very severe. Mild symptoms could just include a little body ache, a little soreness of your throat, a mild fever which disappears after 1 or 2 days, and you think maybe there was actually whether it actually was a fever or not. Sometimes you have a doubt. So there could be a mildest presentation of COVID, and you should suspect it. And the best time to do an RT-PCR test is at least 5 days after the onset of your first symptom. If you try to do the RT-PCR test too early, you may get a false negative RT-PCR
Okay.
because you need time enough your nasopharynx a positive RT-PCR test.
Yeah, Dr. Kaushal. Yeah, please, Dr. KK.
I just want to say is now
Yes,
is a phase of 3 lakh cases per day. RT-PCR means filing an FIR to find out who was the thief. When the body is on fire, our job is to extinguish the fire. If you are looking for the RT-PCR as on today, you are too late to treat. So therefore, treat the patient in a mitigation phase as early as possible. Don't wait for the RT-PCR report. If you are going to wait for the RT-PCR report, you have already lost the game. Treatment must start, you must control your disease by day 3 of symptoms or day 5 of symptoms. If you are going to wait for the diagnosis, you are going to. So I just want to correct Dr. Mathur, that if you have a close contact, then you do your test on 5th day. If you have a close contact with somebody, but if you have symptoms, then the test has to be done as the time you get a symptom, get the testing done. But if the testing is not available, start the treatment as early as possible. When there is a fire, we call fire extinguisher, we call the fire ambulance, and we call the police. To police job, which is PCR job, is to find out who was the thief, who set the fire on. But you also need to do a C-reactive protein, if available, as the earliest to find out how much fire is there. Start treatment before PCR report is available.
Yeah. Dr. Harsh Mahajan.
Dr. KK Agarwal has made a very
Please continue.
right suggestion. Yeah. So there is a rapid antigen test which is also available, which I did not mention. So the rapid antigen test will give you, if you get a rapid test which is positive, then maybe it will be appropriate to start a treatment Dr. KK Agarwal is advising right away. But if the rapid antigen test is negative, then we should definitely, of course, wait for a RT-PCR to absolutely be certain whether the patient did not have. So the negative rapid test does not mean much, but a positive rapid test will give you an immediate solution, because in this current scenario, there is so much of infection going around. We have to use a combination of both these tests. So that was a very good point made by Dr. KK.
Yeah. Dr. Harsh Mahajan, sir, what are those masks which are most effective? Sir, I can't hear you.
The most effective mask that is available here is the N95 mask. And that is, it prevents you from getting the disease 95% and also of transmitting the disease to others. Having said that, this is used to be not available in the country in the first phase of the pandemic last year. And even at 500 rupees, we couldn't buy it. But today, the production capability in India is so high that you can get this mask very easily in bulk, 20 to 25 rupees. And this is something which most people should be able to afford. Last year, we used to say we reserve it only for healthcare personnel because it was difficult to get it. Today, it's universally available. Having said that, the other mask that is available is the surgical mask, which is generally a 3-ply mask. This is also quite good at stopping transmission. So if someone sitting opposite you is wearing a surgical mask, it stops transmission 90 to 95%, as good or nearly as good as an N95 mask, but your protection is about 65 to 70%. So this is something, if you have to wear in today's scenario with the virus running rampant, maybe it may be best to wear 2 of these masks, because now it has been proved scientifically that 2 masks are definitely better than 1 mask. Third, we have the least efficient variety, which is the cloth mask.
Yes, sir.
The cloth mask also, even though it was touted throughout the pandemic, but is not very efficient, especially a handkerchief or a dupatta, it's not going to work much. It has too many pores through which viruses are very, very tiny particles they can go through. So if you are forced to wear a cloth mask, have multiple layers of the cloth mask. And again, I would stress, do double masking. Something definitely is better than nothing, but to protect yourself, ideal N95 mask, after that, the surgical mask, and third, multiple layers of the cloth mask. And you can also use a combination. For example, when I go into a COVID area, I wear an N95 mask, and on top of that, I wear a surgical mask. The surgical mask then I dispose of after coming out of the COVID area, whereas the N95 I can still retain because the surgical mask has covered it. Most important is that you have to wear a mask today, no matter where you are, because now the Lancet article has put a stamp on what we already knew since the last year, that droplet infection may be responsible, but predominantly it is airborne infection. And so even that 6 feet distance, though desirable, you need to have as much distance as possible. Don't go into crowded rooms because the way the pandemic is and the way every second person appears to be infected, you have to be very, very careful. So COVID appropriate behavior is a savior against any kind of mutant virus, any kind of mutation. And not only do you wear the mask, but wear it properly. So a proper mask, worn properly, double masking, all these are very, very important in these exceedingly troubled times.
That's true, sir. Dr. Kaushal, so do you think remdesivir is a Ramban? It only decreases viral load, as doctors are suggesting. But it's still, what do you think that, what is the condition when it is required?
There are several drugs which have been tried over the period of time in the last 1 year. And this was one of the drugs which was used, thinking that it's going to be quite useful. But now there are large studies available. There is meta-analysis available which suggests that it is of very little value, if at all. And if it is effective in the early phase of the disease when the viral replication is going on, when the viremia is there. But at later stage of the disease, as Dr. Agarwal was explaining, the virus has got the different stages. The disease has got different stages. The treatment will depend on the stage of the disease. If at all, if of any little use, it is in the early phase of the disease when the viral replication is going on, when the viremia is there. Later part, it is not. But now the studies have demonstrated that the remdesivir is not of much use. And if at all it has to be used with extreme caution. And there are several other medicines which were used like hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, and say the other supportive medicines which were used during that time when we were testing and trying and seeing if these medicines are useful. They have all been found to be of no use. So if at all, it has to be used with extreme caution, and it has very limited value. And the most important that the other experts have also been saying that the most important is the mask. Use the mask, cover your mouth and cover your nose adequately whenever you are outside your house, and maintain the social or the physical distancing. And then, of course, the hand hygiene continues to remain a very important aspect of COVID prevention. Despite that, the evidence is emerging that surface contamination is not the important route of infection or the important mode of infection, and aerosol also. But, if there is something there, we do not have the evidence to say that, yes, it is, the one of the modes of infection, but we don't have the evidence also to say that this is not the mode of infection. The large data suggests that it is primarily the airborne infection. But aerosol, which earlier, suppose somebody is working in an ICU setting or somebody is working in a closed hospital setting, one has to be careful of the aerosols also. So it is important that we need to understand the behavior of the disease, the behavior of the virus, and the treatment is directed towards the stage of the disease, and it varies from patient to patient also. Suppose you don't need oxygen for everyone. 80% of the people, they recover. So they don't need any specific treatment. They need only general care, like paracetamol if they get fever, maybe steam inhalation, and they need isolation. When they go into the other stage of the disease, when the oxygen saturation is falling, when the respiratory rate is going on, then they would need oxygen support. That may be the time when the steroids could be of some use. But at the later stages, the management is going to be different when the person is really sick and requires ventilator support or require the ICU care. So it would largely depend as to what stage the person comes in. And then, like we were talking about the RT-PCR and the test, if the person has come with the close contact with a high risk, say person, what we call high risk contact, then the possibility of developing infection is there. And RT-PCR and other tests you do to confirm this. And even after confirmation, it is not necessary that the patient will require hospitalization. So the treatment remains conservative in the initial stage of the disease. When the disease warrants that the person is getting sick, they need oxygen support, or they need the ventilator support, or they need the medication support, then it has to be directed towards the condition of the patient. It is specific. It cannot be generalized.
True, sir. Dr. KK Agarwal, sir, when oxygen is required and what is the saturation point, when it is required, and what is the judicial use of using oxygen in COVID-19 patients?
I'm still a believer of early diagnosis. We need to understand that there are two types of inflammation. One is a simple inflammation, immunoinflammation. Second is a thromboinflammation. Once there is a thromboinflammation, you have lost the bus. Macroclots have formed. You may require very high dose of oxygen at home. So I am of a firm believer of early anticoagulation and early anti-inflammatory drugs starting on day one in patients who are comorbid, high risk. In non-comorbid, non-high risk, nothing needs to be done. If you have loss of smell, loss of taste, don't do anything. If you are a menstruating female, just take aspirin. And if you are a child less than 12 years, just don't do anything. If you already have received 2 doses of vaccine, you are not going to get pneumonia. You are going to get a non-pulmonary, non-IgA mediated systemic inflammation. But if you are comorbid, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, hypertension, pot belly, obesity, if you develop a pneumonia, you are not going to tolerate. Remember, all these conditions are pro-coagulative and pro-inflammatory. All conditions which are pro-inflammatory and pro-coagulative must start, because this virus is also pro-coagulative and pro-inflammatory. We must start treatment on day one so that we don't end up into a oxygenation therapy. Number one. Number two, all of them should be lying on their stomach so that at least 2 to 3% oxygenation gets improved. Third, you can buy at least 48 hours before actual oxygenation becomes low by diagnosing hypoxia on exertion. If you are going to wait rest hypoxia, you have lost 2 important days. How? Walk for 6 minutes, 50 feet distance, you have 2 markers, and go all around like taking a run in a 50 feet cricket pitch and calculate your distance. If your distance is more than 1700 feet, which is 500 meters, and your oxygenation doesn't fall, you are not having any pneumonia. You are not going to develop oxygen deficiency in the next 48 hours. So simple 6-minute walk test at home. And if you get exertional hypoxia, you have 48 hours to arrange for the oxygen. At that particular moment, if you act, at that particular moment, you check, have I missed my steroid? Have I missed my blood thinner? If you give, you can avoid. Most of the people are coming late for 2 reasons. A, the चोर तो पकड़ा नहीं गया, मैं इलाज क्यों कराऊं? कि PCR टेस्ट तो आया नहीं. So they are waiting for the PCR reports कि जब तक चोर नहीं पकड़ा जाएगा, मैं अपने घर की आग नहीं बुझाऊंगा. That's a major mistake they do. And the second major mistake they do is they miss their pneumonia on day 3. Remember, Dr. Harsh Mahajan will tell you that you can get CT scan pneumonia by day 2 or by day 3. At that particular moment, you should be able to pick up your hypoxia on exertion. Remember our megastar, Bollywood megastar, his oxygenation and pneumonia was picked up only because he was doing a 6-minute walk test. And when he was walking, he became slightly coughing. He started coughing during walking, and he was diagnosed early and treated early. So you can pick up early pneumonia simultaneously with a CT scan, and that's exertional hypoxia.
That's very
Means,
important.
means reduction of SpO2 by 3, 4, or 5% after 6-minute walk test.
Yeah, Dr. Mahajan, sir, when it is required to go for HRCT?
The HRCT is a very important part of the whole treatment of COVID-19, but it has very specific indications. I feel today that it is being overused. There are people who say get a RT-PCR and at the same time get a CT done. This is absolutely wrong. Dr. K.K. Agarwal has very nicely put it that, you know, the lungs will be affected only if the oxygen level falls. So generally, when the oxygen level falls to 94 or below in someone who is 99 or 100, and now it has fallen, that is one indication. The second indication, like he said, is this stress test, where you walk for 6 minutes, and if the oxygen falls by 5%, then again, you deserve a CT scan. But what is happening today, that everyone is coming for a CT scan.
True.
If you do not have problems, if your inflammatory markers in the blood are normal, if you have mild disease, you do not need anything. This has been, I think, emphasized very clearly by all our panelists, that 80% of cases do not even require treatment. Whatever treatment we are giving, you know, be it any drug, be it any supplement, it is just probably a feel-good factor. That'll do you no harm. But if you start medication early, if you start steroids early, then we know that if steroids are started early in a mild disease, you may actually increase the viremia, you may increase the problem, and the drugs may actually go and harm you. So CT, again, I'll reiterate, should be done, is very useful. You can see the CT severity score, how much of the lung volume is involved, very easily using a CT. But when there is hypoxia, or when these symptoms are very, very marked, and generally, this is divided into mild, moderate, and severe, and we score generally out of 25. There are many methods of scoring it, but the one universally used scores out of 25, where 1 to 8 is mild disease, 9 to 15 is moderate disease, and this is the category where at 11, 12, 13, you may require hospitalization. This can act as a triaging tool, of course, based on everything else. Please remember, we have to treat the patient. We do not treat the CT scan or the blood reports. We have to take the view holistically. 16 to 25 is severe disease, severe involvement of the lungs. But again, I will emphasize, please do not overuse it. Use it judiciously, use it appropriately. And when used appropriately, not only is it useful in diagnosing what is going on, it is also useful in seeing how your treatment is working. Is the patient improving or not improving? One final word, and that has been spoken of before, RT-PCR test coming negative. In today's environment of the pandemic, we are sure clinically there is history of close contact, there are symptoms of COVID-19, and the RT-PCR has come negative. Two things to be done. One, we may have done the RT-PCR slightly early, even before symptoms started. Two, we may have come up with a false negative RT-PCR. In such situation, if you were asymptomatic when you got the test done and it came negative, repeat a RT-PCR after 2 to 3 days. In a symptomatic, where clinically we are sure we are dealing with COVID, RT-PCR is negative, get a CT scan done. It can show you the typical lesions and then can act as a diagnostic tool. CT is not the primary diagnostic tool. It can add on to the clinical features, even if RT-PCR is come negative, because we know The sensitivity of RT-PCR is 70%. In today's environment, we may be right 80% of the time, but still inherently there is a significant negative RT-PCR value. So everything should be put in the clinical context, and we go ahead. And I would agree with Dr. Agarwal, in the serious cases, in those who have reduced oxygen level, where oxygen levels are falling, the quicker we institute therapy, the better off we are. And we cannot wait for RT-PCR report as it is, because of the huge rush for RT-PCR. Reports are getting delayed to 48 hours, 72 hours, at times even longer. We cannot wait. We have to act fast.
Can I add a few things?
Yes, sir. Please
Shalini?
continue. Yes, sir.
Okay, so it has been very beautifully put by Harsh. See, so little is actually known and proved about COVID that everybody you see around thinks he is an expert. Honestly, me, you, or anybody else know very little about COVID. The few facts that we know is that COVID can, for management of patients, can be divided into mild, moderate, and severe, as Harsh has pointed out. This can be based either on the clinical presentation or on the presence of blood reports, or thirdly, on the basis of the CT scan. Now, the other thing which we should know is that the first week is the phase of viremia. And that is the time, if you give steroids, like we were told by Dr. Kaushal also, if you give steroids at that time, you may further aggravate the growth of the virus and escalate, unless the markers in the blood are showing significant inflammation. You should avoid steroids because it may end up further increasing the viremia in the human being. So steroids are usually best safely given in the second week. The first week is meant for the two probable antiviral drugs which have questionable benefit. One is, of course, Fabiflu, and the other one is Remdesivir. So Remdesivir is being used. It has to be used very sparingly if you have moderate or severe involvement on your blood parameters, or the oxygen saturation is down in the first week. Otherwise, Remdesivir should not be used for mild cases at all. And the other thing is that the CT scan, the lung involvement in the COVID patients usually come in the second week and not during the first week. And the CT scan, people who are going for HRCTs in the first week, and just immediately after the onset of symptoms, are likely to show a very futile purpose. And labs of Dr. Mahajan and so many other CT scans will be overburdened with work. So appropriately choosing the timing of the CT scan in the second week, where the lungs will get involved, will get you the right diagnosis if there is clinical indication to do a CT scan, as rightly said.
Thank you so much, sir.
Shalini, I want to clarify certain things.
Yes, please, sir.
Waiting for 1 week for investigation and CT scan, the patient will die. The patient has to be controlled by day 3 and day 5. If you don't control the patient by day 5, we have lost the game. So whatever we do, I agree with Atul Mathur, but whatever you do, you have to make sure. So all over the world, we in clinical practice, we only work on day 5. I tell all my patients, talk to your doctor on day 5 and ask him, am I under control or not? If you lose day 5, mortality is there. The whole treatment, whatever you do, is to make sure by day 5, your CRP is less than 1. And if you miss the target on day 10, your CRP is less than 10. If on day 10, your CRP is more than 10, means you have already gone to a thromboinflammation and you are in difficulty. Thank you.
Sir, what about
to clarify this, that we are talking of the inflammatory state, right? So inflammatory state, if it is present, then we need to act earlier. Otherwise, the message should go very clearly that all mild cases should not be treated in the first week. That's the thing.
No, it's not a question of mild or moderate. It's a question of comorbid patients. Healthy people, irrespective of the age, irrespective of the duration, requires no treatment. But even if you are taking comorbid situation patients, and if you are going to wait for 2 weeks, it's too late. So we are practicing in a comorbid situation. So it is decided by comorbidity and not by the duration of illness. It is not decided by that what time, what week, because inflammation, that is a theoretical first week viral phase, because the viral phase we say because the virus dies on day 8. But inflammation will start upon the response. See, in 4 hours, your CRP will start rising. CRP will peak by 36 hours. CRT should crash by another 17 hours. CRP will double every 8 hours. So by 4th day, your inflammation should be over.
Can
You
I
have
make a
three
small point?
responses. Just 1 second. There are 3 responses for inflammation. When the virus enters, there is a gamma interferon response leading to fever on day 1. On day 2, you will have TNF alpha and IL-6 response. The fever will increase. By day 5, if you have not controlled, TH17 response, which is TGF beta, takes over. And by that time, the inflammation and the fever becomes thromboinflammation for that. So what I don't want to go into the details of that. I can only tell you that if you are going to wait for a week for treatment, in high risk comorbid patients, we have lost the bus. If it is a mild 85%, we are not bothered. Whether you treat them or you don't treat them, doesn't matter. But high risk comorbid patients, fever more than 101, CRP more than 10 in the first 10 days is a marker of impending thromboinflammation and must be treated. Thank you.
Dr. Kaushal, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think it's very important. Several points have been very nicely put forth, but we need to understand that, yes, it's a self-limiting disease in healthy individual in large percentage of the people. And our health facilities are limited. And what is happening that if we tell that, yes, the people are who have milder disease are in the initial phase of the disease, they are occupying beds in the hospital. So the people who are really sick, they are not getting hospital beds. People who are requiring ventilator support, they are not getting ventilator support because the ventilator support is limited. So we need to understand there are 2 categories: people with comorbid conditions, they need to be looked after separately. And there is a group who are otherwise healthy individuals. They also get the viral infection. They also get the COVID infection. Majority of them, 80% will recover. The body has the tremendous capacity to heal itself. Only about 20% will require the hospital care, out of which about 5% or 3 or 4% will require the ventilatory care. So they need to be treated in the initial phase of the disease symptomatically and possibly at home. They need to be rushing to the hospital only when the need is there. If they start rushing to the hospital, we already are into problem. We don't have beds available. I get 10, 15 calls every day. People are wanting to come to AIMS, to trauma center, to Jajjar, or wherever they can get admitted.
Yes.
And many of them are just
everywhere.
scared. They are just scared that yes, something might happen. But see, majority of the people, they need to understand that it's a self-limiting disease. In most, it will recover on its own. When they have started having problem, like Dr. K.K. Agarwal emphasizing that yes, oxygen saturation level is falling, and then they have the respiratory symptoms, that is the time they require the hospital care. If you start admitting patients before that, where is the place for the people who are genuinely requiring this? The second thing is about
this is what happening, sir.
It is happening. We are facing problems. We are into trouble. And the second thing is that about the different stages of the disease, which has been well emphasized, that yes, there are certain medicines which could be of some relevance, could be of some value in some stages of the disease, like in the first stage. But even remdesivir or Feviflo, it has been found to be of very little value. There is data, there is evidence to suggest. Steroids are in value when the cytokine storm is there. It's not otherwise. If you get it early, you are doing more harm to the patient than doing good. And same thing is happening even with teglizumab. That is also of limited value, and it is in the later stage of the disease. It's an anti-inflammatory drug. So that doesn't need to be used in the beginning of the course of the disease. The primary treatment is supportive. And as Dr. Mahajan and Dr. Agarwal was trying to emphasize, that the treatment is needs-based and it is specific. It depends on the clinical condition of the patient and it is highly individualized. It cannot be generalized. And people need to understand that the most important, even with this, is they should go for vaccination, which is preventive, and they should use the protective measures, the COVID appropriate behavior, mask, appropriate use, adequate covering nose and mouth, maintaining physical distancing, do not go to the crowded places, frequent hand wash, Do not just think unnecessarily, despite that there is not very strong evidence that it spreads by surface contact or surface contamination. And then people are coming after vaccination also. They're getting disease. So it does prevent, but it's not completely protective. So the people who have got 2 doses of vaccines, they are also getting COVID symptoms, including some of our faculty members. They got infected because they got exposed to the people. Their RT-PCR is positive. But it does not protect, but it protects from the severe disease. It reduces the mortality. So the vaccination is important, but despite vaccination, the COVID appropriate behavior, the adequate masking, physical distancing, and maintaining the hand hygiene, these are important aspects of the COVID management.
So at last, prevention is better than cure, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. K.K. Agarwal, Dr. Atul Mathur, Dr. Kaushal Verma, and Dr. Harsh Mahajan for joining us on Medically Speaking. Thank you so much.
Thank you.